Still just.
Hello, everyone. We are here and we're just gonna wait a few minutes for folks to log on.
Thank you all for joining us. You know, it's a busy time of year, or at least it's starting to be a busy. Actually, I think this year it's been busy all year. I don't know when. I don't think there's much seasonality to it, but we really appreciate you logging on to spend some time with us. And as Sarah said, we'll give it a few more minutes and then we'll get started.
I was just telling Maggie that there's been some M&A action in the online fitness space that I saw in the news that you all probably are already aware of, but Mindbody is acquiring ClassPass, which in my mind, it seems like an intuitive purchase, right? You get the B2B and then the B2C. And then, well, I call it PAIR, but it's PEAR. It's a personal training app. Is acquiring Aptive, which is a kind of a streaming video workout service app. So a lot of buying and selling going on, which I think we'll probably see more of in the coming years, right? There's so many apps in this space and platforms, which is one of the things that we'll be talking about today.
And we were just talking about how there were 70 plus different apps and platforms that we looked at just in this piece of work. So there is a lot going on right now in this space, as I'm sure most of you are well aware of and probably knee deep in terms of figuring out who the players are and what moves they're making. I'm going to give it a few more minutes. We'll probably start around, for those of you on the East Coast, 2:05. For those of you on the West Coast, 11:05. You can do the math if you're in between. Or I'm happy to waste time by going through time zones. As we get started too, if at any point during our conversation you have a question or a comment, feel free to post it in the chat. Sarah and I will be watching that and we'll try to answer them as close to the time they are typed as possible. But if not, we'll be sure to get to them by the end of our time together. So please feel free to use that. Sarah, let's go ahead and get started. There's some housekeeping things at the beginning, so anyone who jumps on will be able to catch up quickly.
Okay.
All right, so thank you all for coming. If you have questions or comments, please feel free to add them into the chat. This is our second iteration of this study. This feeds into a larger body of work, which is the State of Our Health syndicated project that we've been running since 2018. It was a great time to kick off a project like this because it chronicles fitness and nutrition and mindfulness behavior among US consumers age 13 plus. And not that we wanted a pandemic, but it was really interesting to have this data running during, before and then during, and then, still going on now, to see sort of how much the fitness and nutrition mindset and behaviors have changed over that time period. And one thing that became very clear is that there was this growing adaptation and usage of online fitness. And so in 2020, we launched the first wave of this to really see what the state of online fitness was. And then approximately a year later, we fielded the second wave, which has a lot of the same questions. So you'll see trending throughout, but then is updated to reflect the current environment as well. So we are going to spend, we have an hour. We'll try to get through the content in about 40 minutes. So then we leave plenty of time for for questions. You're on mute. Sarah and I will talk, but we really want you to ask questions within the chat function, and we're happy to answer them. We're giving you sort of a snapshot of the larger body of work. This report is for sale, and we're happy to talk about that as well. But hopefully this gives you sort of a taste of what's available. For any of your colleagues that couldn't make it, we are recording this, and it will be available after we're done with the presentation. So there will be, I believe there'll be an email that comes out that has a link to that for you if you'd like, or you can contact either Sarah or myself, and we'll be happy to send that along. So with that, we'll tell you a little bit about ourselves. I'm Maggie Bright. I've been with Murphy Research for 11 plus years, and a lot of the work that we do at Murphy Research is custom, but we really wanted to launch the syndicated piece, mostly because we had a lot of questions as organizations and as fitness enthusiasts ourselves about sort of what's going on from a mindset and behaviorally among US consumers when it comes to fitness and nutrition. And so this is sort of both something we saw needed in the marketplace, but also a bit of a passion project. I myself am an over-index on usage within online fitness. I have a Peloton, a mirror. I think I have an iFit, the Apple Fitness subscription, and I don't even know about it yet, but have tried the vast majority of platforms and apps that are included within the study. So I'm always excited to see the results. And I will now turn it over to Sarah to give her introduction, and then she'll launch into the presentation.
Yes. Hi. So I'm Sarah Marion. I'm the director of syndicated research here at Murphy. So I was the lead researcher on this project, as well as the State of Our Health syndicated study that Maggie mentioned earlier. So if you have any questions about that, I love to talk about it. If Maggie represents our current user, I'm not sure what I'm not quite lapsed, and I'm not quite current either. I have a few of these programs. We have a NordicTrack iFit enabled machine in the basement, but I cannot say that I use it all the time as much as I need to.
You're an aspiring user.
Yeah, let's put it that way. All right, so let's dive in. So just to kind of set the scene, here were our key objectives this wave. As Maggie mentioned, this is the second wave of the research. So, first thing was we definitely wanted to see what the size of this pie was this year. So trending the market size of online fitness, seeing whether it had grown or shrunk in terms of its user base. We also wanted to continue profiling the different types of user groups that you'll see to see if there have been any shifts since last year. And then this year in particular, we wanted to understand online fitness's role in users' fitness routines, particularly its relationship to in-person gyms and fitness studios, as those are starting to kind of ramp back up again in terms of membership. And of course, we also wanted to track brand awareness and performance and compare it where we could to last year. All right, so Maggie already gave you a kind of quick picture of the methodology, but just so we all know what we're talking about. We did a 20-minute quantitative online survey. It was sent to a nationally representative panel of US adults age 18 and up. It was balanced to census targets on region, gender, age, race, ethnicity, and income. The total sample is 1,676 fitness engaged adults, and that includes our different quota groups. So we have current online fitness users, and those folks are anybody who currently uses any online fitness brand or platform once a month or more and has been doing so for at least the past 3 months. So these are regular users, and honestly, most of them use it multiple times a week. Lapsed online fitness users are people who previously used any type of online fitness brand regularly, but they have not in the last 3 months. So they've lapsed out of the category entirely. And then non-users have never used any brand or platform regularly. So that includes both people who've never even tried it and also people who tried it once or twice, but then never turned into regular users at any point. As Maggie noted, you'll see indications where we've trended information back to 2020. Those are indicated with little up and down arrows, and they're in terms of percentage point change. If it has a little arrow on it, that means it is statistically significant at the 95% confidence level. And everybody who qualified was fitness engaged. And just so we know what that means, we define fitness engaged as anyone who says that they exercise, wear a fitness tracker, or track their fitness with an app at least weekly. Okie dokie, so let's dive in. So as I mentioned, one of our key objectives is to track the growth of this market, and that is where we're going to start. So this first page, this data comes from the State of Our Health syndicated tracker. You can see it goes back to 2019 here. So in orange, you can see the percentage of fitness engaged Americans with a gym membership, and in blue, the percentage who've done an online fitness class in the past 12 months. So basically online fitness trial. And online fitness class is only one type of online fitness, right? So this probably undercounts it a little bit, but even so, you can see the steady growth there. And then circled in bright blue on the far right is a forecast. So gym memberships have actually returned to 2019 levels at around 33%. So assuming that that remains steady, online fitness is projected to overtake it within the next year. So it's pretty big growth there. And of course, this is pitting those two against each other, which as we'll see is a little bit more complicated than that. All right, so here's the online fitness market size. We start with a total US population. We show you the number who are fitness engaged, which is usually around 60 to 65%, 61% here. The number who've ever tried online fitness, and then the number who currently use online fitness once a month or more are current users. And so that market size is 23% of the US general population. So even though we saw that participation continues to go up, that was on the previous slide, the actual size of the current online fitness user base has not changed significantly since last year. It's still at, around a quarter of US adults, a little bit less, 23% this year. And to us, this stability highlights that online fitness is now like a really established part of users' fitness routines, but the lack of growth is kind of surprising given what we saw in the last slide. So what's going on here? So here we see this is among fitness engaged adults, the number who fall into each of those user groups that I mentioned before. So since 2020, which is the bar on the left, you can see a lot more consumers have tried online fitness. You can see, so there's big growth in the size of those lapsed users and trial users, and a decrease in the number of people who have never tried any of it. But the population size of current users is the same. And so this tells us that online fitness continues to appeal, and as you'll see, to a specific type of fitness consumer, and that it's kind of failing to convert more users despite these higher levels of trial since last year. And so you'll hear us talk about lapsed users. The growth there is really interesting to us and probably concerning if you're a brand in this space. So the number of lapsed users more than doubled from 2020. And this means that a hefty chunk of potential online fitness users gave it a really good try and then gave it up. Okay, now for a quick look at our top brands, here you see awareness and trial among all fitness engaged US adults. So as Maggie mentioned, this study included dozens of brands. So this is just these are the top ones, and we'll be focusing on the most popular ones today. So all the way on the left, you can see that Peloton leads in awareness, and in fact, it did last year as well, but it lags in trial, which is also understandable since it's kind of a hefty investment. But newcomer, Apple Fitness Plus, which is I think the 5th in on the list, is really shaking up this category. This brand was not around last year when we ran the study, and it already ranks 5th in awareness, and it has a high trial rate also. 49% of people who are aware have given it a try. All right, so the majority of current users, we asked whether they had started using their platforms before the pandemic or during the pandemic, and then actually broke it down to specific time periods within the pandemic. And so you can see that the majority of them were already in this world. They were already involved with online fitness, whereas lapsed users are more likely than current ones to have begun since the pandemic. But both groups experimented with more brands during the pandemic than they did before. And the highest number was during the period from March to December 2020. So you can see they've tried a lot of brands, particularly current users. They've tried between 10 and 11 brands on average. So there's a lot of experimentation going on here. And with so many brands in the space and so many offering free trials, it's really easy for users to bounce around from one to another. And so that means that the harder task is keeping them engaged with one brand for an extended length of time.
Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about, oh, sorry.
Throw it over to me.
I'm so excited about who uses online fitness and just give you a little bit in terms of the profile as well as the attitudes of these consumers. So on the next slide, just shows you the demographic breakdown of our current users, lapsed users, and non-users. So on the left-hand side, as Sarah mentioned, this group of current users, it's pretty stable year over year in terms of who they are. And they do, when compared to lapsed and non-users, they tend to be younger, more ethnically diverse, and to have a higher income. And sort of fitting with all of that, the fact that they're more likely to be millennials, they're also more likely to have children in the household, and we see a slight male skew. When we move over to our lapsed users, they do skew a little bit older, and they're much more likely to be females compared to our current users. And then our non-users are just much more likely to be boomers and to be evenly split between men and women. So if we move on to the next slide, we can talk a little bit about their attitudes, which I think is really an interesting part of this story. And what's very obvious is that our current users, and again, very similar to what we saw in 2020, are highly engaged in fitness. They're much more likely to be exercising daily. Their fitness attitudes, they strongly or somewhat agree with all of these four attitudes outlined. So it motivates them when they can measure workout results. They look forward to workouts. They're regimented. They're competitive. And really, when they're thinking about their workout selection criteria, they're focused on fun, but they're also about variety, high intensity, and they're more likely to want a sense of community when compared to non-users. Interestingly, when we look at lapsed users, they are exercising a little bit less. They're not as likely to be exercising daily, but there are a lot of criteria that overlaps with our current users. So the idea that the lapsed user isn't the right target for online fitness just doesn't really hold up. There's definitely an opportunity to bring lapsed users into the online fitness community. They work out a little bit differently. They're less motivated by competition. They're a little bit less regimented, but they're still looking to have fun. They like variety in their workouts. They also like support community. They're fine working out inside. They are a little bit more likely to be looking for solo workouts, and they're also a little bit more focused on burning calories. And what we'll see is, they're just a little bit more in tune with probably lower intensity workouts than our current users. So our hypothesis is that a lot of the apps out there are more focused on the needs of our current users, which makes sense, that are more high intensity, a little bit more rigorous. And so the lapsed user isn't necessarily having their needs met. Interestingly, the non-user, as you can see, really has very little in common with the lapsed or the current user. They're very happy to be outside, to be doing something on their own. Their primary form of exercise at this point is walking for fitness. Some of them are doing a little bit of strength training, but they really aren't the right target for these online applications. And so they're going to be a very challenging group to convert to online users. But there's certainly hope for lapsed users to come back into the fold with the right offerings.
Right, and all of these attitudes that really kind of are in keeping with that slightly older age skew and the female skew.
That's not to say that not all older fitness consumers are not interested. I know my parents who are in their 70s recently bought a Peloton, so there are certainly exceptions to that.
There are many of them.
So looking at sport and fitness activities by our user groups, as we mentioned, I mean, our current users, they're engaged in a lot. They're much more likely to have a wide variety of activities than lapsed or non-users. And, they're just doing different things across the board. We're only showing, there were many more asked in terms of activities. We're just showing the top ones here. But they're just doing a lot more. As I mentioned, our non-users are really focused on walking for fitness and body weight resistance exercises. And then if you look at our lapsed users, they're still doing a lot of activities. They may not be doing as many as the current users, but they're still engaged in a wide variety of things. Again, the top two are still body weight resistance and walking for fitness, but they're doing a lot of weightlifting, cycling, all the way down into fishing, hunting, dance, hiking. So they are engaged in a wide variety of activities still. So they're certainly fitness engaged.
Right.
One of the things that Sarah and I have talked a lot about is this idea that our current users are really the trendsetters within this space, whereas our lapsed users they're just less likely to be trendsetters, but that doesn't mean that there isn't time for them to adopt these different platforms and behaviors.
Right.
Interestingly enough, even among our current users, they're working out in a lot of locations. And I think this is telling. I think, one of the hypotheses out there might be that, hey, online fitness has allowed us to bring our workouts in home, which obviously it has, and it's a key need to be met. But our current and lapsed users, they're working out in a lot of places. So for our current users, which is the blue dot, they indicate that on a weekly basis, they're working out primarily at home, but also outside. Many of them still have their gym memberships and have renewed them now that gyms are opening back up. They're going to community and fitness and rec centers. They're doing indoor sports facilities, boutique gyms, outdoor sports facilities, school. So the idea that they have a singular focus of online fitness in the home definitely is not the case. Many of them tend to take their online fitness apps with them to the gym. So they've become sort of omnipresent in the way that they work out. And what we found when we talked to them both last year and this is that they use these places for very specific fitness needs. So they may be meeting, a certain goal by using a particular online fitness app and then going to the boutique gym to get a different, to get their yoga done, and then going to a traditional gym to get weightlifting and strength training done. So they're really finding a platform or a location for each niche of their workout regimen. Okay, on the next page. And we did ask about spending in terms of both the absolute number as well as how that spend is distributed across different elements of fitness. And I would ask you not to focus on the absolute numbers, but more the relative differences here. We know there's a lot of, it's hard to recall what you spent over the past 12 months, particularly these last 12 months. But I think the ratios hold up here. And what we're finding is that current users, just as you would suspect, they're spending a lot more than the other two groups. So our current user spends 2.2 times more than the lapsed user, and the lapsed user spends 2.6 times more than a non-user. And that spend is distributed across a lot of different categories. So for our current user, about 8% of their spend goes to online fitness, which leaves a large amount going to other places. Probably not surprisingly, a lot of the current user spend, 26% in this case, has gone to home gym equipment. And that likely is a response to COVID and the pandemic and sort of building up their ability to work out at home. Interestingly, when we looked at our lapsed users, they tend to spend a larger percentage of their spend on gym memberships and studio memberships. The actual dollar amount is lower than our current user, but it's a larger portion of their overall spend.
All right, so next we're going to talk about online fitness and the future of the gym. So as you saw, the kind of profile of current users really fits what we saw last year. They're highly fitness engaged. They love variety, and that is in terms of what they do and also where they work out. They're using a lot of different fitness resources. And we'll see that come into play here. All right, so this is consumers' reasons for using online fitness. As you can see, convenience and low cost are at the top for both groups. So that's really what drives online fitness usage, along with maintaining fitness during the pandemic. And then just the desire for variety, for guidance. And then there's a kind of a good selection of folks in there who want to avoid the gym, whether out of cost or they don't want to go or feel self-conscious. So lapsed users stand out in being less likely to share some of the more specific goals that current users have for using online fitness. And that includes things like liking a particular instructor or looking for a particular type of class that you can see down at the bottom of the list. So for lapsed users, affordability is really a much more important motivation for them than for current users, alongside convenience, of course. And they're also more likely to be comparing online fitness's costs specifically to a gym, which you can see in the second little circled bar there. So it might be that the value equation just doesn't work out as well for them or as well as they'd like in terms of motivation and actual usage when they're comparing those costs directly. Now, for current users, online fitness really delivers on what they're seeking from it. So again, that's variety, convenience, and motivation. And you can see those in these bars here. However, given how many needs current users have that we saw in the previous chapter, particularly those around socializing, support, community, team sports, even with these positive attitudes that you can see here, even so, more than half of current users are looking forward to returning to the gym. So those are the attitudes on the right. So once you start comparing online fitness to their in-person options, that's when those positive attitudes start getting a little bit lower. So current users are also just much more likely than other groups to be members of a brick and mortar gym right now, not in the past, currently. And so this question is actually asked in terms of engagement with gym brands, which also includes like a local gym and another specify option. And you can see here from the little trending information that current users rejoined the gym since last year, and almost all of those gym brands have seen significant increases in current users rejoining the gym. So lapsed users did not have the same significant number of changes in their gym memberships compared to last year. So while some current users might have replaced their gyms with online fitness, the majority do not seem to have done that.
I think there's another point to that. A lot of these current users were already in an online fitness space prior to COVID. So they had already established a routine of online fitness, even when they still had access to the gym. So it became a complement to their gym membership versus a replacement for many of them. Now their engagement with online fitness may have increased. They may have dialed up and down the time that they're spending it between the two, but they were already using both in tandem prior to COVID and will most likely do so post-COVID.
Right. So we asked consumers of the places they worked out in, how often they used online fitness in those spaces. And then we also asked them what they used it for. And so this also leads us to conclude that online fitness is unlikely to replace the gym. We got a question, the definition of gym.
I was just gonna interrupt you.
So it's what you see here. It's described as gym that requires a membership. And then we have some options, like for example, Planet Fitness, LA Fitness. So I think for most people, this is a big box gym. The other option is a boutique gym or fitness studio. So there is it's a little bit up to consumers whether they want to describe their own gym as a boutique or a large gym with membership, but it's a gym that you've paid to be a member at.
And within that gym with membership definition, it does also mention local
gyms.
Yes.
So here you see on the left, this is the percentage of current users who work out in each of these locations, which as we saw previously is most of them. How many are using online fitness at that location always or most of the time? And the numbers are very high. If you add in sometimes to this in terms of frequency, all these percentages go up into the 80s and 90s. So current users are using online fitness everywhere that they work out. And on the right, you see in the bubbles what they're using online fitness for in each location. And so in terms that there are two takeaways here for me. One is that, like I just said, online fitness is not confined to the home at all. We think of it as part of this shift to at-home fitness, but while it is certainly part of that, it's also not that. Users are using it everywhere pretty much all of the time. And you can see that, so 72% of people who work out at a gym with a membership are using online fitness at least most of the time there. And what they're doing with it is 59% are using it for planning or guidance for solo workouts. And then 56% are using it to track their workout, which might be calories burned or activities accomplished. And then smaller percentages are using it for other things. And these are very similar to the reasons they're using it at home. And so what this tells me is that online fitness has solved a key need that current users have at the gym, specifically for guidance, for workout plans, for tracking, that's unrelated to the pandemic and the shift to at-home workouts, but is related to probably unmet needs they have at the gym. And then the other surprise here was simply that people are using online fitness at the gym nearly as much as they're using it at home.
Okay,
we'll dive into the brands.
Yep, we'll talk a little bit about the brands that you're using. And as we've mentioned many times, we looked at 70+ brands within the context of this study. And we're going to focus on the ones that have the most usage. But anyone who rated a brand had to be familiar with and using that brand. So these are the ratings that we have are among those who are who have knowledge of the brands that they're rating. So the next slide looks a little bit about the top online fitness brands. So this is the percentage of current users who are using these platforms. And as you can see, YouTube Fitness or YouTube is the highest at 30%. It was the highest last year as well, but it is down. And we're seeing the only one of these apps or platforms that has grown compared to last year is Peloton, which is at 13% of our current users are using that platform. I think it's really interesting to note, we look at sort of a journey of how they got into online fitness, and YouTube is really sort of like the starter platform for a lot of consumers who come into this space. So that's where they're either attracted there to find, a specific personality, or they go looking for fitness content on YouTube. And our hypothesis here is that a lot of times it's very overwhelming. And I think that's why some of our lapsed users don't stick with it, is that they go to YouTube to find content that they need, but there's a lot of choices and you have to sort through a lot of things. So if you're looking for sort of general fitness, it's hard to find the offering that best meets your needs. If you're looking for something very specific, I'm looking to tone my abs, something like that, you may have better luck finding a specific content to meet that need. But I do think that this really highlights the idea that YouTube is a destination for many people who are starting their journey in online fitness. And so having a presence there is important, and it's beyond just ads. I think it's sort of this idea of you can attract new users into your platform by starting to communicate with them through YouTube. And you can see even Facebook and Instagram is the number 3 brand on this list. So it is a good jumping off point for many of our consumers, and it's probably a termination point for some of our lapsed users because of the overwhelm. Apple Fitness Plus is one that we're definitely going to keep an eye on. It's interesting to note that, this wasn't even in the survey last year, and it's already up to 16% in terms of usage among our current users. So it has had really fast growth. And I think one of the things, just in perusing some of the content myself, I noticed that there were a lot more of those sort of lower intensity offerings. There's a lot of guided walks and things like that, that maybe there's a lot of mindfulness. It's kind of looking at this holistic wellness type content. And so it may be appealing to some of those lapsed users who are looking for a different type of content than our current users. It may ultimately fulfill a need in that space.
Mm-hmm. And the kind of integration with your other Apple products.
Yeah.
You have a watch with the step counting, and the price point makes it, I think, a really compelling option.
Okay. On this slide, we're looking at the intersection between satisfaction with the platform or app and past 3-month spending on that platform or app. So if you're looking in the upper right-hand corner, these are brands where top box satisfaction is high. So it's we've indexed everything. So high would be above 100. And past 3-month spend is also high. Again, that's all indexed to 100. So you can see some of the ones that are popping up here are Peloton, NordicTrack, iFit, and Mirror. These are the ones where you're paying more, right? You're investing in this, but they're also resulting in higher satisfaction. If you look at the bottom right-hand corner, again, high satisfaction here, but garnering a lower past 3-month spend. So you'll see the brands and platforms that pop in that quadrant. And then on the left-hand side, these are brands where satisfaction is lower. And there are some brands where they're still paying more. But in the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see where satisfaction is low and spend is also quite low. Okay. There's a lot on that slide. The next slide really talks about how, what are the drivers of satisfaction and what leads to those higher top box satisfaction scores for different platforms. And I think Sarah mentioned this a little bit already, but a lot of them, they want to have fun. I mean, this is a group of consumers who are interested in fitness and in working out, and they want to enjoy their time while they do it. They're also looking for motivation. They want to trust the brands they're working out with. They're looking for guidance on how to improve their fitness. They like variety. And they want the feel of a personal training session. So they want some sort of connection. But it doesn't necessarily have to be, one-on-one or like interacting directly with the instructor. It's more about the idea of, I feel like I'm in a class and I'm getting some instruction, and I like that about it. Some of the lower importance features are, my friends and family are on the platform. They don't necessarily need live streaming classes that they have to schedule ahead of time. They don't need the workouts to be offline. They're not necessarily, a top driver isn't showing them progress over time within that app. And like I mentioned, they don't need to interact personally with the instructor.
I think the importance of brand trust, it will be interesting to watch given how many brands are in this space. Like there's just so many. And yet the ones we see popping to the top of both satisfaction and usership are names that have been around in the fitness space for a long time. And so I think if you're a new brand, it's probably really difficult to get the trust that you need to get consumers to give you a try.
It's a great point. So the next couple of slides are sort of head-to-heads of brands and platforms that are occupying similar spaces. And so the first one we're looking at here is Peloton versus iFit versus SoulCycle. And these are just some of the key metrics that have been pulled out to give you a sense for what's at play here. And these are all our integrated fitness equipment brands. And, Peloton is still the leader in terms of usage. And they do really well. I mean, if you look at satisfaction, likelihood to recommend, continuing in the future, and then drivers on top drivers of satisfaction, their performance there, it's high. They're doing a really good job of meeting the needs of consumers within that space. iFit struggles a bit there. The satisfaction numbers are high, but likelihood to recommend is low, even though continued usage is pretty much on par with Peloton and SoulCycle. And they do lag on a lot of the top drivers of satisfaction compared to the other two on this slide. SoulCycle is really interesting to me in this space. There is certainly a much lower percentage of users who are using the SoulCycle platform and bike, but those that are using it are really happy with it and really engaged with it for the most part. They have 27% of them are using it daily, which is higher than the other two. They're spending less. Peloton is definitely the higher spend of the three, but they are, they're likely to recommend it. They're likely to continue using it in the future. And if you look at how well they're doing on top drivers of satisfaction, they're the highest performer in terms of I have fun using it and doing the workouts. And that's the number one driver of satisfaction within the online fitness space. So they've created a loyal following in many respects, but it's a smaller following than Peloton has been able to create. The next one we looked at was our streaming workout classes sort of section here. So this is the Apple Fitness, Beachbody, and Daily Burn, and you can see how these rank next to each other. As we mentioned, Apple Fitness Plus has just seen tremendous growth in the time that it's been on the market. So 16% of our current users are engaged with the platform, and 28% of them are using it daily. As the name would suggest, our Daily Burn users are more likely to be using it daily. And then among those who are using Beachbody, about 23% of them are daily users. Past 3 months spend, Apple Fitness Plus garners a little bit more, and then Beachbody and Daily Burn are pretty similar in terms of spend by current users. As we look at satisfaction, recommend, and continue to use in the future, again, fairly similar. There's a slightly lower likelihood to recommend for our Beachbody users, but when you look across performance, these guys, they're stacking up pretty similarly to each other in terms of key drivers, performance on key drivers of satisfaction. So it's a pretty tight-knit group of offerings within this space. And Beachbody appears to be the most fun of all of them. So well done on that front. And then we wanted to put the YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest in here. And one of the things that, again, we mentioned already that's interesting about these specific platforms is they tend to be the first place that a lot of people go to start their online fitness journey. But they're not necessarily the most satisfying of places to start. So it's kind of an unfortunate beginning for some of our consumers. Again, high penetration, but daily use is in the teens. Spend is really low here in terms of past 3 months. And then, you can see sort of satisfaction, likelihood to recommend and continue in the future is much lower than the other two categories that we looked at, particularly among Facebook and Instagram consumers. They tend to score significantly lower on the various key drivers of satisfaction than the other platforms that we looked at. And really what they do well is variety, which makes sense because there's so much content available across these platforms when it comes to fitness and exercise. So they are not necessarily hitting the marks on a lot of the key drivers, but they can deliver in spades on variety, particularly for YouTube and Pinterest.
Right. And, as Maggie mentioned, this is probably what makes them overwhelming to new users. Like it takes some work to figure out the right content creator who's doing the right workout for you, who's putting out enough videos to maintain variety. And so if you put in that work, like this can be a very useful platform, YouTube in particular. One of the brands, Yoga with Adrienne, like she's one of the biggest yoga providers, and it's mostly on YouTube. But to get there takes some extra work that I think a lot of lapsed users are just not really willing to put in, or may not even, they may not even come with specific enough needs to get to something that they like. But it is inexpensive.
Yeah. All right, we'll quickly run through some of the key takeaways, and then we want to leave a few minutes for questions if there are any. So please feel free to start adding questions into the chat function if you have them. But in terms of the key takeaways based on what we're seeing here, current monthly users has really remained the same. The users that we have there are trying a lot of platforms, but it's been pretty steady in terms of the percentage of our fitness engaged consumers who are currently using online fitness. And that means there's an issue in terms of failing to convert new users into, or, they're trying, but they're not becoming repeat customers. And so there's some unmet needs that can be satisfied to bring more of those lapsed users back into the fold. Sarah and I genuinely believe that among those non-users that we talked about, they're going to be very hard to convert, just given the way that they work out and their age, but there's still a lot of opportunity for growth within the online fitness category. And some of that may be unlocked through kind of providing different content that's more focused on lower intensity, calorie burning. It doesn't necessarily need to be as competitive and metric driven, because these lapsed consumers are a little bit less likely to be focused on this, competitive high intensity aspect of fitness.
Yeah, I think unlocking the kind of the engagement of lapsed users is probably necessary to continue to grow the category.
One of the key questions that we had coming into this wave of the research is what's going to happen to gym membership. And I think what the data proved here is, yes, online fitness is going to continue to grow. It will most likely overtake gym membership within the next 12 months, but it will never replace gym importance for a lot of our users' fitness routines. They are finding ways to continue to use the gym, to bring online fitness to the gym. It's a key part of their fitness regime. And so they will always like going. As Sarah mentioned, 50% of them are really looking forward to getting back into the gym now that things are beginning to reopen. Okay, and that dovetails nicely into our next takeaway, which is really that online fitness is not just an at-home adaptation. They're using it everywhere. They're taking online fitness to the gym, outdoors. Some of them are even doing group classes at the gym. So there's a lot of different ways to integrate online fitness content and tracking into regular gym routines and outside of the home. Again, the majority of the uses is in home, which makes a ton of sense. That's what it's designed for, but it is not rooted solely in an in-home environment. And I think there's some opportunities there, right? There are ways that then your traditional brick and mortar gym can better partner with online fitness platforms to sort of bring the best of both worlds to the consumer who's really engaged in fitness and really willing to spend on fitness. So there's most likely some partnership opportunities that can be leveraged.
It also means that gyms and studios need to understand what needs online fitness is filling for their customers, so that they can identify gaps in their own services, right? So like, why are your members turning to online fitness rather than the trainers that you have in your gym? So you need to understand the overlap so that you can do better for your own consumer base if you're an in-person fitness provider.
And then YouTube. It's, we debated long and hard about, should YouTube be in this space? You don't pay for it. What is its role within online fitness? And, it really is a dominant force within this landscape, even though it doesn't look like a lot of the other content providers. It is the most popular place for consumers to go for content. And it is typically the place that consumers start their online fitness journey. So it is a place where brands need to be, whether that's for advertising or for content or for directing people to their platforms. And interestingly, I think Apple Fitness Plus is something that we're going to want to keep an eye on. I think there's a lot of room for them to bring in some of these lapsed users based on the content and the ease of adaptation into consumers' lives already. So it'll be interesting to see how they sort of navigate this process moving forward. And that is all the content we have. We would love to answer questions. We have about 10 minutes left. And again, I think a lot of what we learned this wave was very similar to what we thought we would learn. I think maybe we expected a little bit more growth within the category at large, but the user profile looks very similar to what we were seeing in 2020. The platforms that were sort of established back in 2020 are still very much the established platforms now. And I think, it's interesting to watch something like an Apple come into this space and perhaps disrupt it. It remains to be seen. At this point, they have very few, within our survey, I don't think we had any lapsed users from that platform. So those who were early adopters of it seem to be happy with it. So I think that's the one we'll watch. But if there are any questions we can answer, we would love to. This report is for sale. We are happy to talk about that as well. We've given you a snapshot of what's available within this presentation, but there is a lot more. When you ask about 70 brands, you have a lot of data. So we're happy to entertain any questions about that as well. And Sarah's contact information as well as mine is listed on the screen. And I think both of us could talk about this specific study as well as State of Our Health, the larger syndicated study, for hours. So we're always happy to entertain that conversation.
Yeah, as Maggie mentioned, there's a lot of brand data. So if you have brands that you're particularly interested in, do let us know.
And since we don't have questions, we are happy to wrap up early. And again, thank you all so much for coming. Hope this was helpful. And we're always happy to chat.
Yes, and if you want to email questions, that's fine too.
Great, and the recording will be available shortly as well. So I'm sure you're all going to put it on repeat and watch it over and over again.
Thank you very much, everyone, for coming.
Have a great